Yeah! And be free. You look back at the season from hell that the Fever had. None of us expected them to be in this situation. None of us expected them to be winning a very close Game 3.
Listen up. Caitlin Clark just dropped a bombshell that's blowing up every critic's narrative and making the so-called experts look clueless. An inside source from the Fever is breaking it right now. Clark is officially completely recovered from that brutal groin setback. And here's the wild twist. The Indiana Fever are marching straight into the WNBA finals. Clark herself has gone public, confirming she's lacing up. Yes, you caught that right. She's back on the hardwood. And with her return, the balance of the entire league just got flipped on its head. But here's the million-dollar dilemma. If you're sitting in that Indiana coach's chair, do you dare unleash Caitlin Clark in the finals, or is that gamble too dangerous?
When she does come back, do you feel like...
I would not want to play the Indiana Fever, especially with a healthy Caitlin. I mean, that building, I got a little taste of it last year. And doing the Final Four, shows when she's on the court, when someone can really change the game in a couple moments like she could be quiet for 10 minutes and then pop, 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 it's 4 threes and the game's out of reach. And I think what the Fever are doing without her, that's going to help them in the future too, knowing that they can win a game when she's not on the court or she's not, at her best. So yeah, that Fever team, I would not want to play them with a healthy Caitlin.
Let's be brutally honest. Nobody expected the Indiana Fever to even sniff the finals this season. With constant injuries, a roster packed with youth, and pundits repeatedly preaching they just need another year, this team was written off as background noise. When Caitlin Clark went down with that brutal groin injury, the so-called analysts didn't just lower expectations, they slammed the coffin shut on Indiana. Game over. Season done. But the Fever? They never got that memo. Instead of folding, they clawed through absolute chaos and turned the darkest stretch of their year into the ultimate proving ground. Aaliyah Boston? She morphed into a monster in the paint, bullying defenders like it was South Carolina all over again. Kelsey Mitchell? Money Mitch reminded the league her jumper is a weapon of mass destruction, burying shots when the entire season dangled by a thread. And Odyssey Sims? She turned into the steady veteran heartbeat, making those gritty hustle plays that never trend on Twitter, but absolutely decide playoff series. Together, that mix of toughness and defiance shoved Indiana right into the WNBA finals, run already historic. And then came the shockwave that detonated across the sports world. Caitlin Clark didn't just hint. She flat out declared she's suiting up for the championship. Let that sink in. The same media that gleefully buried her season now has to eat crow. The same haters who laughed when she limped off are now forced to watch her walk back into the biggest stage in women's basketball. This isn't a comeback, it's a takeover. Clark didn't just return, she returned in the single moment that matters most. And that flips the entire power balance of the league. Before her injury, Clark wasn't just competing, she was changing the economics of the sport. Ticket sales, ratings, road sellouts. Every metric exploded when she stepped on the floor. Defenses stretched to the parking lot just to keep her in check. Her passing carved lanes for Boston and Mitch like a surgeon. And her swagger? It elevated every single Fever jersey beside her. And now all of that is back, right when Vegas and New York were praying they'd never see it again. Let's cut the fluff. The haters are shook. For months, they've chirped that she's too soft, too hyped, not ready for playoff physicality. They celebrated her injury like vultures circling a carcass. But now, she's back, and she's back in the finals. That's like tossing a live grenade into the living rooms of every rival fan base. And the worst timing imaginable for those super teams. Vegas and New York already looked rattled after Indiana bulldozed through the postseason without Clark. Now, they've got to face a Fever squad that's not just fearless, it's fully reloaded with the one player who changes the geometry of basketball itself. Because here's the truth, Clark's value isn't just in her stat line. Even if she's only 80%, her gravitational pull warps every possession. Defenses can't sag on Boston. They can't smother Mitchell without leaving Clark wide open. Every coverage becomes a pick-your-poison nightmare, and every choice is lethal. The psychological damage is real. Rivals thought they dodged the bullet. They thought the Clark problem was out of sight, out of mind. And just when they started bracing for Boston, Mitchell, and Sims alone, boom, Clark explodes back into the mix. That's demoralizing before the first tip-off. And here's the twist nobody saw coming. This wasn't luck. Indiana played chess while the league was playing checkers. Remember, when they only submitted 11 names for the playoff roster, even though the rules allow 12? At the time, everyone shrugged it off as a mistake. But now it looks like genius. That empty slot was the hidden door, the escape hatch, the perfect setup for Clark's shocking return. The Fever brass never ruled her out. They stayed ice cold, kept her tucked on that inactive list, and let the rumors swirl. And then, at the exact moment the spotlight was brightest, they dropped the bombshell. That's not just strategy, that's pure theater. And the craziest part? It's all perfectly legal. Under WNBA rules, playoff rosters freeze after the regular season. No hardship deals. No last-second free agents. What you submit is locked in. But there's a catch. Players already under contract but listed inactive, whether injured, suspended, or even on maternity leave, can still be reactivated if a slot is left open. And that's exactly the loophole Indiana exploited. Clark wasn't a rental. She wasn't some mid-season gamble. She was always there, waiting in the shadows. And now, the Fever are cashing in that gamble at the deadliest possible moment.
Walks there to the stanchion.
Of course, nobody's pretending this move is risk-free. Groin injuries don't just vanish. They linger, they flare, they test every ounce of conditioning. Indiana knows they're playing with fire by unleashing Clark, but here's the catch. Even at half speed, she warps the game. Put her on one leg, and defenses still guard her from the logo. That presence alone justifies the gamble. And don't kid yourself, this isn't only Indiana's call. You can bet the league office left fingerprints all over this decision. The WNBA knows exactly what Clark in the finals means. Ratings, revenue, and national relevance they've never tasted before. This is bigger than basketball. This is a business earthquake. And the numbers don't lie. Clark's practice clips are pulling millions online. Her comeback announcement eclipsed the buzz of entire playoff rounds. Love her or hate her, she's the only one commanding the world's attention. For a league desperate to stay in the conversation, that spotlight is priceless. But here's where it gets messy. The same league that quietly punishes coaches for praising Clark now has to cash in on her fame. That contradiction screams insecurity. Clark is bigger than the WNBA brand right now, and that makes certain people squirm. But Indiana doesn't care about bruised egos. They care about banners. And with Clark back, their ceiling isn't just higher, it's stratospheric. Boston suddenly has freedom inside. Mitchell gets breathing room on the arc. Sims doesn't have to drag the offense alone. Even role players like Sophie Cunningham become threats simply because defenses can't cover everyone. That's why rivals are panicking. Indiana already clawed to the finals without Clark, and now they're plugging the most dangerous piece in women's basketball back into the machine. That's not just scary, it feels unfair. And the haters? They're officially cornered. For months they trashed Clark, too hyped, too soft, too fragile for the pros. Well, now she's strapping up for the finals in year 2. Not as a bench warmer, not as a storyline mascot. She's competing, disrupting, rewriting the entire series. The irony writes itself. The same critics who mocked her all season now have front row seats to her comeback. Fever fans have the receipts, and they're happily rolling the tape. The shock isn't just that Clark returned, it's that the timing is so lethal. Finals basketball isn't about box scores. It's about who can own the moment. And Clark? She's been living under the spotlight since Iowa. The crowds, cameras, pressure. This is her natural habitat. Add that aura into the finals, and you're not just adding a shooter. You're dropping a gravitational force. Every defender tilts toward her. Every coach has to rewrite the playbook. Every fan reacts before she even touches the ball. Overnight, Vegas and New York went from confident to paranoid. And think about the domino effect. Boston gets single coverage instead of double teams. Mitchell can actually breathe. Sims can spend less energy creating and more on crushing matchups. Clark doesn't need 35 minutes or 40 points to change the math. Even 20 minutes shifts the floor. Even just standing in the corner bends rotations. That's why this feels like a Hollywood plot twist, because it practically is. A finals without Clark is a nice storyline. A finals with Clark? That's a national spectacle. Broadcasters are prepping graphics, networks are clearing prime time, and casuals who ignored the entire regular season are suddenly tuning in. And that's what infuriates the haters most. Her comeback overshadows their excuses. She's overrated. She's not 100%. She'll ruin chemistry. None of that matters once the scoreboard tells the truth. If Clark hits even a handful of momentum-shifting shots, the whole conversation flips, and the same critics will be forced to explain how the overrated player just cracked the so-called super teams. But let's keep it raw. This gamble carries real danger. If Clark looks rusty, the critics will feast. If she aggravates the injury, the takes will be ruthless. Indiana could have played safe, sat her until next season, and nobody would have blamed them. Instead, they chose risk over caution, belief over fear. That single decision says everything about how far this franchise has come. This is the same organization once mocked as the league's punchline, 5-win seasons, empty arenas, wasted lottery picks. That Indiana is dead. This Indiana is fearless. This Indiana bets on greatness. Bringing Clark back isn't desperation, it's a declaration. And here's why it's terrifying. Vegas has already been exposed. New York's star-studded roster still wobbles under pressure. Neither looks untouchable. Add Clark to Indiana's grit, and suddenly those super teams don't look so super. Now, legacy, this is where it gets legendary. If Clark steps onto that finals court, even if she doesn't dominate, it instantly becomes one of the most iconic moments in WNBA history. Year 2. Injuries. Doubters. And then, a dramatic finals comeback. That's not just sports, that's mythology. Kids will copy it in driveways, fans will never forget it, and the league will be defined by it. And here's the kicker. Clark didn't even need this moment. She was already the face of the league, already selling out arenas, already breaking records. But this is about sending a message. She's not just here for hype. She's here to win. She's here to flip the script on every hater and drag an entire franchise into history. And the best part? The critics can't stop it. The comeback they swore would never happen is unfolding live. And the only thing left for them to do is watch.